January 15th, started a new workout routine. February 3rd, last entry. March 10th, beginning learning Spanish. March 28th, forgot to practice. April 2nd, downloaded a meditation app. April 15th, haven't used it since. If this sounds familiar, you're experiencing what I call the start-stop cycle. If your accountability assessment identified this pattern, you're not alone. In fact, this is one of the most common barriers to sustained progress I see in my coaching practice. Hi, I'm Dr. Ernest Duncan, and for the next 20 minutes, we're going to do two things. First, we're going to diagnose exactly why you keep starting and stopping. And second, I'll give you specific strategies to break this cycle permanently. Here's what most people don't understand. The start-stop cycle isn't a willpower problem. It's a systems problem. And once you understand the real mechanics behind why this happens, you can design your way out of it. But first, let me ask you this. How many times have you told yourself, this time will be different, only to find yourself back at square one for a few weeks later? The start-stop cycle follows a predictable pattern, and understanding this pattern is the first step to breaking it. Phase one is the motivation high. Something triggers your desire to change. Maybe you see someone else's success, or you read an inspiring article, or you feel frustrated with your current situation. This creates what I call motivation momentum. You feel ready to tackle anything. Phase two, the initial action. You take immediate action while motivation is high. You sign up for the gym. You buy the books. You download the apps. You make the plans. This feels productive and reinforces your belief that this time is different. Phase three, the reality gap. Within days or weeks, you encounter the gap between your motivation and reality. The work is harder than you expected. Results are slower than you hoped, or life just gets in the way. Your initial system wasn't designed for these realities. Phase four, the gradual decline. Without addressing the reality gap, your actions become inconsistent. You skip a day, then 2 days, then a week. And each gap makes it harder to restart because now you're dealing with guilt and evidence of failure. Phase five, the full stop. Eventually, you stop completely. But here's the crucial part. You tell yourself it's temporary. I'll restart next week or after this busy period. This keeps you psychologically invested without taking action. Phase six, the guilt and reset. Time passes, the guilt builds, and eventually new motivation emerges, often triggered by the same factors as before. You convince yourself that you learned from the last time, and the cycle begins again. Now, here's what's important to understand. This isn't a character flaw. This is a predictable response to poorly designed systems. So, there are 5 root causes of start-stop cycles. Cause number 1, motivation-dependent systems. You're relying on feeling motivated to take action, but motivation is an emotion, and emotions fluctuate. Sustainable systems work regardless of how you feel. Cause number 2, it's all or nothing thinking. Your plan assumes perfect execution. When you can't do it right, you stop completely instead of adjusting. This creates a binary outcomes, perfect execution or total failure. Cause number 3, complexity creep. Yes, you start simple, but gradually add complexity. More exercises, more rules, more tracking. Each addition increases the chance of breakdown without proportional benefit. Cause number 4, invisible progress expectations. You're measuring the wrong things or expecting visible results too quickly. When you don't see immediate progress, you assume the approach isn't working. And cause number 5, no restart protocol. You have a plan for starting, but no plan for restarting after inevitable disruptions. This makes every interruption feel like a complete failure instead of a temporary pause. So to break the start-stop cycle permanently, you need to understand what's happening in your brain when you start and stop. Your brain operates with 2 decision-making systems. System 1 is automatic, emotional, and seeks immediate rewards. System number 2 is deliberate, logical, and can delay gratifications. Most start-stop cycles happen because these systems are in conflict. When you start something new, System 2 is in charge. You're thinking strategically about long-term benefits, but day-to-day execution relies heavily on System 1. When System 1 doesn't see immediate rewards, it starts resisting. Starting something new releases dopamine, which is your brain's reward chemical. This is why beginning feels so good, but sustaining something requires different neurochemical patterns. Without understanding this, you keep chasing the start high instead of building sustainable momentum. Here's a crucial insight. Every time you stop, you're reinforcing an identity of someone who starts but doesn't finish. Your brain uses past behavior to predict future behavior, and the more start-stop cycles you've experienced, the more your brain expects the next one. So there are some traps, some psychological traps you want to be aware of. The first trap is the planning fallacy. Here, you consistently underestimate how long things will take and overestimate your future motivation. This creates an unrealistic expectation that guarantees disappointment. Trap number 2, the sunk cost reversal. Instead of continuing because you're already invested time and energy, you stop because the investment hasn't paid off quickly enough. This reverses normal sunk cost thinking. Trap number 3, the perfectionist paradox. You set high standards to ensure success, but these same standards make it easier to quit when you can't meet them consistently. But the good news is, once you understand these psychological patterns, you can design systems that work with your brain instead of against it. Now let's get practical. I'm going to give you a specific framework for breaking the start-stop cycle. This isn't theory, this is what works. It's called the restart framework. The R stands for reduce the minimal viable action. Forget about your ideal plan, but what's the smallest action that still moves you towards your goal? If you want to exercise daily, maybe it's putting on workout clothes. If you want to write, maybe it's opening a document. But the key insight is that you're not trying to achieve your goal with this action. You're trying to maintain the identity of someone who takes action towards this goal. The E in restart is to establish restart triggers. Assume that you'll stop at some point. I'm not being pessimistic, I'm just being real. You want to create specific conditions that automatically restart your action. For example, if I miss 2 days, I will do my minimal viable action 3 times in a row before expanding. So this removes the decision making that typically prevents restarts. The S in restart stands for stacking success metrics. You want to measure consistency, not just outcomes. You want to track how many days you took action, not just results achieved. This creates a positive feedback even when progress feels slow. Create multiple ways to win: showing up, maintaining your streak, learning something new, or simply not giving up completely. The T in restart is time box everything. Give yourself specific time limits for both action and evaluation. Instead of "I'll do it this daily forever," try "I'll do this daily for 30 days, then evaluate." This reduces the psychological weight of permanent commitment while still building momentum. The A in restart stands for automate decision points. You want to reduce the number of decisions required to take action. Pre-decide when, where, and how you'll act. The more decisions involved, the more opportunities to stop. If possible, attach your action to existing habits or routines. This uses established neural pathways instead of creating entirely new ones. The R in restart stands for review and adjust weekly. So you want to schedule weekly reviews to assess what's working and what isn't. This prevents small problems from becoming cycle-ending failures. You should ask yourself, what made action easier this week? What made it harder? What one adjustment could improve next week? And the T in restart is track restart speed. You want to measure how quickly you restart after stopping, not whether you ever stop. This reframes temporary stops as normal parts of the process rather than failures. You want to celebrate fast restarts. If you usually take 2 weeks to restart after stopping, restarting after 3 days is a significant progress. Now let me give you 3 specific strategies for implementing this framework. So here are some steps to reduce the minimum viable action process. You want to really focus on the smallest step possible to build that consistent momentum. The 3 things you should do is focus on the smallest meaningful step to keep that momentum. You're not necessarily forgetting your ideal plans, but you're taking that smallest step in order to get that progress, to get the ball rolling. So if it's just putting on your workout clothes, or if it's opening that writing document, you got to celebrate the fact that you're taking a step towards your ultimate goal. The next thing you need to do is maintain the identity of someone who takes action. You want that growth mindset. You want to be able to be seen as a doer as opposed to someone who just thinks about it and doesn't take action. And when you do that, you're able to build more lasting habits, and you become more persistent in achieving your goals. And finally, you also want to reduce the overwhelm and lower your activation energy. So the more that you can focus on those small incremental steps, you'll make consistency easier and reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed. And you also want to work on establishing restart triggers. Those are those moments where you will inevitably stop. You got to be able to start back up quickly. So expect them and plan for that trigger. So you got to anticipate those pauses in progress, and you want to create a predefined action that you'll take to get you restarted again without hesitation. So you want to reduce as much delay as possible. The second thing that you want to do is to use specific actionable restart triggers. What I'm talking about is, if you miss 2 days, perform a minimum viable action 3 times before expecting your efforts again. So you're in that process, you're ensuring a manageable and confident return to progress. And the third action you want to take to remove decision fatigue and to restart easily is to transform those disruptions into manageable pauses instead of failures. So I'm thinking about, what do you need to do to foster persistence and self-belief in the process and continue along that way. You want to be able to create success metrics so that you can evaluate your consistent actions and build sustainable motivation towards your ultimate goals. So one, you want to track your consistency through actions rather than immediate results. And what that means is basically you're looking at persistence, steady progress, resilience, not necessarily accomplishing the outcome at the get-go. Also, you want to be able to define multiple wins in different ways to celebrate. So is it showing up? Is it maintaining streaks? Is it learning new things? Or is it just avoiding quitting? And those things need to be celebrated, because if you don't build the momentum, the growth mindset to accomplish your goals, you're less likely to be successful. And then you want to develop that feedback loop where you're constantly reinforcing the positive actions that you're taking towards your goal, even when the results appear to be slow, because ultimately they're going to build upon each other and you're going to be able to ultimately succeed. And then you want to continue to align your success metrics with your behaviors so you can boost your confidence and your motivation to continue. Now, let me give you 3 specific strategies for implementing this framework. Strategy number 1 is called the 2-day rule. Never allow yourself to stop for more than 2 consecutive days. This prevents temporary pauses from becoming extended breaks. Missing 1 day is normal, but missing 2 days requires immediate restart actions. Strategy number 2, the scaling protocol. You start with actions so small that they feel almost ridiculous, and it only increases complexity after 14 consecutive days of completion. So this builds confidence and neural pathways before adding challenge. And then strategy number 3, the identity bridge. You want to focus on becoming the type of person who does this action, not on achieving specific outcomes. So ask yourself, what would someone who desired whatever the change is do right now? This maintains motivation even when progress is slow. Think about creating automatic decision points. So I want you to be able to reduce the decision fatigue that occurs when sometimes you may interrupt your routine. So you want to decide when, where, and how actions occur. So you want to minimize that decision making that happens when you reach that overload and cognitive ability and resistance throughout the day. And you want to link those actions to existing habits. So you want to use habit stacking to integrate new behaviors. So you're going to build on those neural pathways, making actions easier to take and maintain. And finally, you want to transform those decision points so that they are smooth and encouraging and have you believing in yourself. Those weekly reviews are really important in order to build that momentum. So make plans to conduct your weekly check-in to evaluate your progress. You want to assess what worked well. You want to identify any difficulties that you face, and then determine one action you could do to implement, to change, to improve what's coming up the following week. And then you want to do these regular reviews to avoid these small issues from escalating. You want to attack it early, and you want to stay encouraged in the process. And then you want to be able to, with these weekly reviews, stay accountable and be able to reflect upon your performance and look for those opportunities to celebrate your successes and implement smaller changes to move forward. When we talk about those restarts, here's 4 things to keep in mind. You want to measure how quickly you restart after a stop. And you want to reframe that stop as temporary and normal. It happens, but you have to be able to restart as quickly as possible. And when you do restart, you want to celebrate, because moving forward, it's always a positive and productive tool to have in your tool belt. And finally, you want to build anti-fragility by tracking restart speed. You want to see how quickly, as you build momentum and build that resistance, that you can restart after the stops that may eventually happen. Let me show you now how to apply this framework to the most common restart scenarios. Scenario number 1, after missing several days, don't try to make up for lost time. This creates overwhelming catch-up pressure. Instead, restart with your minimal viable action for 3 consecutive days before returning to your normal routine. Scenario number 2, after a major life disruption. Travel, illness, or family emergencies can derail established routines. So plan for this by creating disruption protocols, modified versions of your actions that work in unusual circumstances. Scenario number 3, when you lost your interest. This is often a sign that your current approach isn't aligned with your actual values or that you need to refresh your why. Take time to reconnect with your original motivation or just adjust your approach. Scenario number 5, when progress feels too slow. Remember that consistency compounds. Small actions taken regularly create exponential results over time. So focus on the process, not the pace of the results. Scenario number 5, when life gets busy, you get busy. This is when minimal viable actions prove their worth. Can't do your full workout? Do 5 push-ups. Can't write for an hour? Write 1 sentence. You got to maintain that identity and neural pathways. The key insights across all scenarios is restarting is a skill that improves with practice. The goal isn't to never stop. It is to get better at starting again. Here's how to fit this into your overall accountability journey and the bridge work framework. Breaking the start-stop cycle is a crucial bridge component. You can't build sustainable progress across any gap if you keep starting over. This framework provides the foundation for all other accountability strategies. So, this week, choose one area where you experience stop cycles. Apply the restart framework to design a new approach. Focus only on establishing your minimal viable action for 7 consecutive days. Next week, implement your restart triggers and begin tracking consistency metrics. Don't worry about results yet. Focus entirely on showing up. Week 3, conduct your first weekly review. What's working? What needs adjustment? Make 1 small improvement to your system. And then after a month, if you maintain consistency, consider slight increases in complexity. If you've had stops, focus on improving your restart speed. Here's what I want you to remember. Breaking the start-stop cycle isn't about perfect execution. It's about building anti-fragility, the ability to get stronger from setbacks rather than being broken by them. So some people will find that applying this framework resolves their start-stop patterns completely. Others will discover that their cycles are connected to deeper issues around goal clarity, life design, or psychological blocks that require more comprehensive support. If you implement this framework and still struggle with consistency, that's valuable information. It often indicates that the surface behavior, starting and stopping, is actually a symptom of deeper alignment issues that benefit from professional guidance. The Bridgework framework addresses not just the mechanics of consistency, but the strategic thinking, the environmental design, and accountability systems that support sustainable change. Start with this framework, build your restart skills, and remember, every restart is evidence that you haven't given up, and that's more powerful than you might ever think.